Hey everybody, it's John Hope Bryant, and I'm live from Baltimore, Maryland, signing on. This is the Civil Rights Movement. John Hope Bryant, founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Operation Hope, author of the new book, The Memo, which comes out next week, September 18th. Get your advanced copy if you haven't already. We're opening our 100th open side location here in Baltimore tomorrow. You'll see a notice of that on our Facebook page. Continuing the civil rights movement and the work of Frederick Douglass, hey, Divine Ford, Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ambassador Andrew Young, and so many others. This is a historic day and a historic moment. I've told you that Frederick Douglass was not just an abolitionist, he was not just a civil rights leader. Hey, JL, wearing your bracelet. Not just a civil rights leader, not just somebody who fought for the rights of freed blacks, but somebody who owned his own destiny. I've told you he's somebody who is significant, but I never gave you a visual. I'm about to give you a visual today of a man in a different way who changed America and changed a sense of his own somebodiness. Now, to give you a little bit more context for this story, hey, Lisa Shore, hello, Yolanda, how you doing? Good to see you. Hey, Melody Bazemore and Michael Daisco and others. So the Freedman's Bank, 1865, March 3rd, I've told you that we helped to get that building renamed that building in honor of former slaves. It was formerly, hey, Delmar Bennett, it was formerly the U.S. Treasury Annex Building. Look in your history, you'll see that the Freedman's Bank, hey Nancy, the Freedman's Bank was located across from the White House in Washington, D.C., for 100 years, known as the Treasury Annex Building, with a hidden history that this was a bank that was chartered by Abraham Lincoln to teach former slaves about money, 1865, March 3rd. And then Lincoln was assassinated on that date, well, a month after that date, in April of 1865. Frederick Douglass went on to run that bank to try to sustain this legacy, put $10,000 of his own money into that bank. You can go to the Freedman's Bank page on Facebook, like that page, follow that page, learn your history. When you go to Washington, go visit the Freedman's Bank. I'm the only American citizen ever to rename a building on the White House campus ever. Operation Hope did that last year with Secretary Jack Lew, the Freedman's Bank building. There were 35, 38 locations around the country of Freedman's Bank locations. Baltimore was the first. Very interesting. I wonder if it was tied to the fact that its CEO, after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, Frederick Douglass, lived in Baltimore. So Frederick Douglass went on to run this bank, put $10,000 of his own money into this bank, which is $20 million today. So he was not a broke man. And people don't know this history. I've also told you that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s father was also not just a preacher, but a capitalist. He served on the board of a bank for 40 years, Citizens Trust Bank, so that his son, could work for free in the civil rights movement. Well, today I'm going to give you a little bit of our history, our walking history. So if you go to Atlanta, you go to our Hope Inside location at Ebenezer Church, you'll see a living testament to Daddy King. How you doing, man? Daddy King, who preached with his son at Ebenezer. You'll see the Martin Luther King Senior Complex that we built with Ebenezer Church and Reverend Warnock, funded and supported by our partners, SunTrust Banks, and so many others who helped us to make that commitment real. It exists today, and that's in honor of Daddy King, who was a civil rights leader and a civil rights leader. Well, now today, you'll be able to come to Baltimore. And I'm here giving a speech today and opening a Hope Inside tomorrow. But what you're seeing behind me is a living testimony to Frederick Douglass's enterprise. And those who don't know Frederick Douglass, I'm going to read a little bit about who he is, and I'm going to show you these row houses again. But Frederick Douglass, who's worth about $5.5 million when he died, in today's dollars, which is a lot of money, owned a lot of real estate in Baltimore. He was a real estate investor. In fact, he role modeled because his son became a developer and developed a real estate development in honor to allow prominent blacks to come and relax, to come in like a resort. Well, Frederick Douglass had an estate in Washington, D.C. That's now part of the U.S. Park Service. Go there and take your family. That he owned the whole block, the whole corner. Well, he was able to live that way, able to do his civil rights work, able to work for the government for free, because he owned this. All of these houses. He owned, yes, hey Angela, Frederick Douglass owned these 5 row houses, which he built in the late 1800s, and rented out to working class African Americans. Let me read to you. So here's a little tribute to Frederick Douglass, a little plaque they put up in his honor. This home recently sold to an investor. I wish I would have known. I would have bought it myself. I would love to have owned part of it. It is a beautiful street. I would have loved to have owned a part of this history and be able to also rent it out to folks today and provide affordable housing. Okay, I'm gonna read this plaque to you. And if you don't know Frederick Douglass, go do your research. He's an incredible guy. Was enslaved. Let me read this to you. Okay, I'm getting excited. Frederick Douglass: those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are those who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. It's a bad brother. Born in February 1818, a February baby. Hello. Born in February 1818. Get close as you can see it. On Maryland's eastern shore, Frederick Douglass escaped from slavery to become the founder and editor of an abolitionist newspaper, an eloquent speaker, and a leading reformer. That actually doesn't say all that he was about, but it's like somebody calling me a public speaker. It just drives me crazy. I'm an entrepreneur. Okay, all right. After the Civil War, he held, and I was not comparing myself to Frederick Douglass, by the way. Don't hold a candle. After the Civil War, he held high public office as U.S. Marshal for the District of Columbia. That's 1877. That's after the Civil War. The Recorder of Deeds for the District of Columbia. That's 1881. Consul General for the Republic of Haiti. In charge d'affaires for Santo Domingo. I believe that's Dominican Republic today. The most prominent African American of the 19th century, the 1800s. Douglass has often been called the father of civil rights. So the guy who really predated Dr. King. His formative years, and I must give W.B.E. Du Bois his love, by the way. His formative years were spent here in Fells Point, Maryland, where he lived intermittently from 1826 to 1838 as a slave. This is extremely important. Please tell your children and those who are young to pay attention to this. He lived here as a slave. Somebody owned him. Hold on a minute. Where he lived here in Fells Point as a slave, teaching himself to read and write. Can't get kids to go to school today, but this man taught himself how to read and write. In 1838, Douglass obtained a seaman's protection paper from a retired sailor. Obtain means either. Well, I'm sure you can just convince a brother to give it to him. But obtained is an interesting word. He obtained, so basically by any means necessary. He obtained a seaman's protection paper from a retired sailor, certifying the holder of that paper was a free American sailor by any means necessary, and entitled to all rights under the American flag. With this paper, Douglass made his escape from slavery to New York City. In his passionate speeches and writings, and as a holder of public office, Douglass was a crusader for human rights, never missing the opportunity to speak or act on behalf of the oppressed. He died on February 20, 1895, the same month he was born, about 100, just under 100 years later. He lived a long life, and he died following a speech on women's rights. That's the way I want to go out, helping to kick up somebody who needs support. Once known as Douglass Road, the houses at 516 to 524 South Dallas Street. You want to come here, it's 524 South Dallas Street in Baltimore. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that. Hey, Antonio. Were constructed by Douglass in the 1890s. He made these buildings. He built them properly on the foundation of the old Strawberry Alley Methodist Church. That's very important because he wanted to honor his church where he learned to read and write. Douglass did. He wanted to do well and do good. He wanted to do well by doing good. These are all his properties. He wanted to do well by doing good. He wanted to show that you could be a capitalist, be a free enterprise leader, come from slavery, own yourself, do anything. And he went from, now check this out, he went from being owned as property to owning property. Boom. I'll say it again. He went from being owned as property to owning property, from being owned as property to owning property, and from being told what to do to telling people what he was going to do, from being oppressed to helping people become impressed, from surviving, hey Marvin, to thriving, from being run over by life to running for his life, to running and living a life that was worth us all emulating. This is a great man. He did great things, and he lives on forever. Don't you want a legacy? Hey, Tom Smith, don't you want a legacy? Don't you want to live a life that others will not forget and will often remember? Don't you want to have your children and those that you care about say that he or she lived? She lived for something larger and more important than self. She was not a victim; they were a victor. I saw one of the reviews, the early reviews on my on Amazon for my book, The Memo. The book's not out yet. It's out on September 18th. Thanks for everybody who's already advanced purchased it. If you haven't, go pre-purchase today. Let's make it a bestseller. I'll be on the Steve Harvey Show. And I'll be on the Roland Martin Show to help to kick this off in coming couple weeks. But one of the reviewers said, well, you know, basically all good reviews, but one of them said, well, John Bryant makes it simplistic. You know, there are institutional barriers, there's racism, there's all this stuff, and John Bryant gives people an excuse who are racist to say that, you know, all things are possible because he made it, everybody else can make it, and he uses a lot of fancy people's names. Well, first of all, what am I supposed to use? I'm supposed to use names that you don't recognize, people who won't inspire you to think that you can do anything you can do. And yes, I made it through in part because I decided that I could. Rounded through it, I'm going to get to it, and so yes, there are barriers. Yes, there is racism. Yes, that all of these problems exist. But let me ask you something. And I'm going to hark back to Frederick Douglass, who bought his own freedom and lived his own life and went from living in a row house as a slave to living in his own house as an owner of a mansion and a block in Washington, D.C., and blocks in Baltimore, and helped to set others free. Let me ask you something. Is the strategy of complaining, whining, saying what we can't do, what's not possible, who's standing in front of us, and all these barriers, is that helping us? Is this strategy working? Let me tell you something. The definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I'm not saying that your problems are going away, or your problems are going away. I'm saying exactly the opposite. Your problems are not going away. No one's coming to save you. And your problems, as far as your government are concerned, of them being concerned about you, giving you structural changes, giving you the Department of Justice changes, giving you societal changes, giving you laws to protect the underserved. If you haven't noticed, that's not going in the right direction. Whatever laws and protections you have now, before your mother, your father had, if you're oppressed, if you're black, white, red, brown, or poor, you're poor whites, or black, white, red, brown, and yellow, you probably are going to have less protections, not more. Less people vouching for you and vouching for you and protecting you, not more. So you have to become your own Justice Department. You're gonna have to become your own dreamer. You're gonna have to become your own protector. You're gonna have to buck up, buckle up, shut down, lock up, get you some education in your head, get you some knowledge in your body, get you some resources behind you. And the guy's like, well, mentioning names like Andrew Young is what he said. Well, how do you think I met Andrew Young? It wasn't from a trust fund. Wasn't part of some elite. I had to chase this guy all around the country and finally get his attention. And that's what you got to do for your life. Chase down success and finally get its attention. Is this going to be easy? No, it's not. Nothing good comes easy. Nothing. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. An entrepreneur works 18 hours a day to keep from getting a job. If you wait for somebody to save you, you might as well just give up right now. It's not going to happen. So I want you to model Frederick Douglass. I want you to model Dr. Dorothy Height. I want you to model all these heroes and sheroes. Hey, Divine Ford. I want you to take, hey, Dwayne Smith. I want you to, it's right, no more excuses, because they don't work. They don't work and nobody cares. Let me leave you with this drop the mic moment. The problem used to be love or hate. The problem of Frederick Douglass and the problems that were apparent clearly in the 60s with Dr. King and others. The problems were love and hate. I love you or I hate you. But today the problem is not love or hate, it's radical indifference. Today nobody cares enough about you to hate you. They just don't care. What are you going to do to care about your own life? What I'm saying is, people say, well, why should I try God? He can't possibly, I don't know what he can do for me. My response is this: God cannot possibly screw up your life worse than you have. Give him a try. So give the Memo a try. Give Frederick Douglass' his role model a try. Give the free enterprise system a try. Try this stuff. Somebody said to me, I hate rich people. No, you don't. You hate rich people until you become rich. I'm out. This is Frederick Douglass. This is his legacy. Here's somebody that everybody says we admire and respect, but he wasn't just a civil rights leader. He was a civil rights leader. Peace, light, and love. I'll respond to comments in real time.